Today is the 2nd of April 2013. Yesterday was the 1st of April, April Fool's Day. That's the day my father died as a result of the car crash in 1965. One day he was my best friend, and the next day he was gone. I'm so glad that the last few years we were quite close. We got on very, very well. And the reason I make videos, people say, well, why do you make videos? I'm not going to be here forever. I just wish my dad could have made videos so I could have listened to it and watched it. He told me such interesting stories. Been in the Navy, he travelled the world, and you know, I loved his story. But most of those stories I have forgotten now. I just know he talked about submarines, about China, Malta, where my sister Pamela was born, and the record's gone. He was a writer, a journalist as well. I've got a few things that he wrote, but I have hardly anything left from my father's life, only memories. So the reason I make these videos is that maybe one day there'll be ancestors or relatives of mine, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nieces, nephews, great-nephews and nieces. One day maybe they might be interested to learn where they came from, because all these people that have been involved in my life, without me, they wouldn't exist. I know that sounds a bit pretentious. Without me, they wouldn't exist. But it's true. Without my dad, I wouldn't be here. Without his dad, he wouldn't be there. He wouldn't have been my dad. And so we do inherit. We don't inherit complete personality, but we do inherit certain things. Like my dad was gifted with music, and so was his mother. She was an organist. She played. They were both. My dad came from a Methodist family. He was one of 6 children. His mother took a very active part in the community, and she played the organ in the church. And my grandfather, that's my dad's dad, he started off as he was a solicitor's clerk, like a power legend. He then became a journalist, and also he founded a magazine called Fire. So that's all I'm going to say about that. The reason I like making videos is not so I can look at myself and think, oh, aren't I fantastic? Because I'm not. I don't make very good videos. And I'm getting old. I'm 74 this year. I'm not that old. But nevertheless, when I'm gone, you can see and hear what kind of man I was. I try and give a picture of the good, bad, and the ugly. There's some things in my life that I'm not proud of. There are others that I'm extremely proud of. And I look back on my life, and I've always tried my best. I've done many things. I've done lots of things. Excuse me, a bit chesty this morning. I rode the moped yesterday, and I think I didn't go far, only one kilometre or so the first time with the moped this year, but I think the cold air affects my lungs. Anyway, what made me think of making the video today? Excuse me. So I was watching an old film with Sean Connery from Russia with Love, and part of the film is set in Turkey, and it brought back my memory of when I was in Turkey. I was in Turkey in 1970. I would say 1970. About 1977. I expect you all have heard of the film Midnight Express, about a young man, a young American young man who tried to smuggle some drugs out of the country, and he was caught and in prison. If you haven't seen that film, it's very well worth seeing. Midnight Express. Anyway, while I was in Turkey, I was en route to Iran. My journey took me through 14 countries in 10 days. And when I was in Turkey, I had a Volvo, a left-hand drive Volvo, which had been prepared carefully for the journey. I was taking a load of machinery to Iran, and the fee for that was £4,400, which in 1977 was quite a lot of money. The journey to Iran should have taken roughly 14 days. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about this. Yeah. And before I had the truck prepared. It wasn't new, but it was it wasn't that old. The truck Volvo. It's a 16 gearbox, and I loved that truck. I really loved it. But I thought I would have the crankshaft reground, which I had done in England, which cost £600 just for the crankshaft to be reground. I can't quite remember why I decided to have it reground, because I don't remember that there being any symptoms. But anyway, that's beside the point. The important thing is that leaving Istanbul, this was in December, possibly the middle of December, about. And I had winter chains. I bought those in Istanbul, but they weren't. I hadn't fitted them, and there's quite a long climb out of Istanbul. Quite a long climb, about many kilometres of climbing steadily, which I didn't think was a problem, because when you go over Mont Blanc, that's it. That can take 2 or 3 hours of a slow climb in a very, very low gear, but never had any problems. I've been over Mont Blanc dozens and dozens of times, never had any trouble, providing you take it steady, going up and coming down, of course. But anyway, on this occasion, there was a sudden loss of power. I pulled into a lay-by, and I lifted the thing, I think the whole of the cab swings forward, so you can get to the engine. I'm a bit vague about things, but I do remember that there was a turbocharger, and when I had lifted the front of the cab off so you could see the engine, the turbocharger was white hot. So I don't think it was the crankshaft. It was the turbocharger had failed. So the truck had to be left, and I don't know whether I got a lift. I must have done. I didn't walk. I got to the I believe the capital of Turkey is Ankara. So I got to Ankara and checked into a small motel there, which had a little restaurant as well. And I went to see, well, when you arrive in Turkey with the vehicle, your vehicle is entered onto your passport. And you cannot leave Turkey without also leaving with the vehicle. If you try, it's quite a serious offence, because they will assume that you bought the vehicle in to sell it. As there was quite a shortage of trucks in Turkey, and illegal trafficking in trucks and parts was something which took place. So it was impossible to leave the country without my vehicle, without the Volvo. And I had gone to see the consulate in Ankara, and he had explained the situation to me. And I said, "Is there nothing you can do to help?" He said, "Well," he said, and he told me about drivers who were abandoned all over Turkey, and also about drivers who had broken some regulation. They'd either hit a camel or been involved in an accident. Sorry. Oh dear, that was rambling today. And they were imprisoned in terrible conditions. And one of the things that kept those truck drivers alive was trucks going through these little villages and towns would take food to the prison for the prisoners. And the consulate said to me that these are the really serious problems that I have to deal with about prisoners, truck drivers who are abandoned in prison, either because they've had an accident, and the attitude or the law in Turkey, if you have an accident, it must be your fault, because if you weren't here, the accident wouldn't have occurred. So whoever is to blame for the accident that you're involved in, the foreigner is always held responsible. It's kind of a no-win situation. Also, you always have to compensate the family. If you kill a family member, not only are you there with a murder charge, but you also have to compensate the family. And also, if you hit a camel or a donkey or anything that belongs to the family, also there's a financial penalty. I think a camel is about £30,000, but the average truck driver doesn't have that kind of money. And there were all kinds of situations like that. And I heard so many stories from the consulate and also from other drivers that I met when I was staying in the motel in Ankara. So I didn't really know what to do. And I thought, what am I going to do? I was short of money, and I didn't have the £1,200 to repair the truck. I thought to myself, if I can get back to the UK, maybe I can come up with another truck with the spare part. But I thought, well, how do I get out of the UK? And I was in that motel for a couple of weeks, all over the Christmas period as well, in 1977, 78. And I actually heard about a driver who had taken the route over the Tarsus mountains in the winter, which I'd been warned against trying to do because it's so dangerous. And he had gone off the road, off the mountain road, and fallen into a ravine. And his truck had more or less turned upside down. And he was maybe 200 meters from the road in a ravine. And that happened, I believe, about September of the year, and he didn't actually get rescued until the following spring. And how he survived, he had food with him, and whenever he heard the sound of a vehicle on the road above, he would try to climb up, but always he was too late. And eventually he was picked up by a driver. He was taken back to Ankara, and he went to the consulate. This is a story the consulate told me, that he'd been there all those months, and he couldn't leave Turkey without his truck, even though the truck was destroyed. The truck had to be recovered with heavy lifting machinery in the spring and taken to a customs compound. And only then could it be arranged for his truck to be taken off his passport so he could leave. So this was all rather worrying. The whole situation was rather worrying. And one day I was having a snack with a group of drivers, and there was a driver, I think his name was Dave, from Devon, who was driving a truck back to the UK. I think he'd been to Iran, and he offered to give me a lift back in his truck to the UK. So I agreed. I accepted the offer, and we left Ankara beginning of January 1978, and when we crossed the Bosphorus, we crossed the bridge, and then approached the border with the customs. It was late at night, and there were several trucks with us in convoy. We all went to the restaurant to have coffee or something and to eat something. And while they were there, I was walking around the big compound, watching what was going on, and I could see that each truck that went through the border, there were police, the army, customs officials, and they were looking on top of the truck. They were looking underneath the truck. Also, they were looking inside the truck. Our plan was to hide under some tarpaulins in the back of Dave's truck. But I thought to myself, if I get into his truck under those tarpaulins and I am discovered, not only will I end up in prison for years and years and years, so will Dave. So this is one of those life and death decisions that you have to make, and you have to think about what do I do? Do I stay here and let them go without me? Or do I take a chance and risk the freedom of both myself and Dave? What do I do? I was watching how carefully they inspected the trucks, and I came to the decision that if I was in the truck, under the tarpaulins in the truck, I would be discovered. It was a no-win situation. Excuse me again. I really should get a drink, but I think I should continue this. And I should say that it was quite foggy and quite dark. Where the trucks were crossing, there were very bright lights. And it was very well lit. So I started to walk. There was a border fence, and I started to walk along near the border fence, and I came across another checkpoint which was unmanned. It just had a barrier there, and there was a gap where trucks could go through if the barrier was lifted, of course. And there was no customs or soldiers actually, or no sentry boxes there. But I stood and watched, and I saw that there were two soldiers with machine guns who were patrolling the fence on the other side of the fence. And I stood and watched the soldiers. They disappeared into the fog, and I started to count how long it was before they came into view again. And after maybe 10 or 15 minutes, I decided that I would just about have time. If I timed it correctly, I could run through, get under the barrier, and run into Bulgaria. And I hadn't told Dave or the other drivers that what I was going to do. I wanted to keep them out of it as much as possible in case anything went wrong. But anyway, I timed my run, and I ran through the checkpoint, under the barrier, and into Bulgaria. And I wasn't seen. There were no shots. I got into the customs hall of the Bulgarian side, and went into. There was no problems with my passport, even though I had left Turkey illegally. It didn't bother the Bulgarians at all. So after my customs formalities there, I was in the cafe, in the restaurant, small cafe restaurant, and after maybe 1 or 2 hours, the other trucks arrived, and they came in, and when they saw me, they were absolutely amazed, astonished. How did you get here? And I explained the situation. I explained that the risks would have been so great if they'd have tried to smuggle me through, that I told them exactly how I managed to get through, and that is the end of part one. That is the most interesting part of how I left Turkey. But in part two, I will tell you a little bit more about the journey back to the UK. Thank you.